When we talk about the exponent rules, yes, we can think about the colored cubes activity we just did, but they are actually very easy to remember if we remember the acronym MADSPAM. Have y'all heard that before?
Yes.
MADSPAM, M-A-D-S-P-M. The MADSPAM rules actually help us remember the rules for the 3 properties we discovered with the colored cubes. And what it says is that if we are multiplying the bases, we add the exponents. That's what you guys saw with the product rule when we did those first few. We counted up how many X colored cubes we had, and that was the product rule. So whatever the powers are, you just add them together. One thing that you do not do you see any change in the base?
No.
Did that number or letter change? No. Don't change it then. You're going to change it at least once in our activity today, I promise you, and then you're going to be like, she said this. The second thing, the DS of MADSPAM stands for divide, subtract. That is our quotient rule. We saw that whenever we had our fractions with our colored cubes, that because of that identity and inverse property, we're able to just cancel them out. That means we're taking the top minus the bottom, or if you know the bottom is bigger, bottom minus top, leave it in the bottom. That's the divide step. So multiply, add, divide, subtract. If we have a power raised to a power, we are going to multiply. That's what we saw when we took those groupings and had the groupings repeat multiple times. That is the power rule. This is going to feel like distribution, air quotes. It's not really distribution. We discussed that earlier. The property of distribution is only multiplication over addition and subtraction, but it looks like the way that you would do multiplication. Let me zoom in because I know this is kind of far away so your eyes can see it. These are your MADSPAM rules. These are the ones we discussed and we did in the activity at the beginning. When we talk about the other rules, the 2 that we didn't discuss with our colored cubes, one of them super easy. It's called the 0 exponent rule. Anything, don't care what it is, raised to the 0 power is 1, the end. Cool? Great. The negative exponent rule, I like to call this your cleanup step. You are not allowed to have negative exponents in your final answers. So we always must clean them up. And really what it means is you are just taking that factor in power and moving it to either the denominator or taking it from the denominator and moving it back up to the numerator. And that's what these rules are saying. If you have something with a negative power, you clean it up by taking just that part, slapping it down to the other side of a fraction bar and calling it a day. So if it's already in the bottom, you're going to move it up to the top. Notice, the base did not change, the number did not change, you just dropped the negative. Does that make sense? Are these rules something we've seen before? Great. We're going to do 4 examples with me in the notes, and then I'm going to send you immediately back to the whiteboards so you can practice. Can I scooch around, or are we still writing? We're still writing, I can see. All right. In general, the order in which you use the exponent properties is as follows. It's really PEMDAS, GEMDAS, right? You're going to use the power rule because of the parentheses. If there's something you can condense inside the parentheses, you do that first, obviously, but then you're going to do the power rule to take care of those parentheses. And then you will do the product and quotient rule, honestly, in whatever order you want, until each base appears only once. At the very end, you will clean up any negative exponents and get my answer looking nice and neat. By the way, if there is ever a number raised to a power, instead of like an X or a Y raised to a power, I do need you to multiply that number out. So if we ended up with a question that said 2 to the 3rd power, you would not leave it as 2 to the 3rd power. You'd tell me that that's 8, because you can actually do that expansion. All right, let's hop into our examples. Example number 1, we're going to simplify. -3, x to the 4th, y to the 5th, all raised to the 3rd power. Now, when you go to do these problems later and by yourself and on the whiteboard, you might be able to do this with a little bit less work than I'm showing. I'm going to show a lot of work for explanation, but if you're starting to get them wrong, you need to show the same amount of work as me. So the first thing I see is parentheses. I need to take care of that. There's nothing to simplify inside of it, so I'll take care of this exponent on the outside. That means I'm going to take that negative, or that 3, and I'm going to apply it to every single exponent that was already in that factor, in that term. And since it's a power raised to a power, MADSPAM tells me to multiply. This is a moment we all mess up on. That 3, that exponent, needs to go to each piece, including the -3. Since a -3 right now has a power of 1, it's 1 times 3, so I just let it be 3, yes?
What is the -3?
This right here? So I don't like drawing these arrows all the time because it's misleading, but I'm doing this, right? I still have to multiply that 3 to the exponent of -3 because it's a part of the puzzle. Yes? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you for asking. Okay, so now at this point, I just need to continue multiplying and doing all the cleanup steps. So I'm going to take care of the number first. This is telling me to do -3 times -3 times -3. First of all, what's a negative times a negative times a negative? 3 negatives make a negative. An odd number of negatives make a negative. An even number of negatives make a positive. Because squared would be positive, but cubed would be negative. Okay, and then 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. This becomes -27 x to the 12th, y to the 15th. Some of us are going to be able to go from the problem written down on our paper to the answer. But if you're honestly getting them wrong, I need you to show me some work in between. Cool? Let's look at the second one. Second problem is -7x y to the 4th multiplied by -2x to the 5th y to the 6th. Again, I'm going to show a lot of work. You might be able to jump past this work. We're going to take the regular numbers and we're going to do what it says and we're going to multiply them. Then we're going to take the bases of x and we're going to add their exponents together because multiply means add. And I'm going to add the exponents for the y's together. The regular numbers act like regular numbers. -7 times -2 is 14. This becomes x to the 6th, y to the 10th. In these first two examples, are there any more questions, comments, and or concerns? The third problem here says -35x squared y to the 4th, all divided by 5x to the 6th, y to the -8th. Now, divide means subtract for exponents. Dividing with coefficients with big numbers means to divide, just like multiply meant to multiply. So I'm going to do -35 over 5. I will do x to the 2 minus 6, and I will do y to the 4 minus -8. Whoa, I said minus negative, but what did I write down? A positive. A negative minus a negative, boop, becomes positive. Minus a minus is plus. Did I lose anybody right here? No. We took the regular numbers and did what regular number rules say, which is to divide them. But then I go into exponent rules because I have exponents. So x squared divided by x to the 6th said subtract, divide, subtract. Y to the 4th minus -8, 4 plus 8. And when we finish this, -35 divided by 5 is -7. This is x to the -4. This is y to the 12th. Can I be finished right now? Why can I not be finished? Thank you. You're not allowed to leave negatives in your exponents. So even though I correctly did this problem, we don't stop at this final answer. You're going to take only the x term because that's the only part that's negative, and you're going to move that bad boy to the bottom. Everything else will stay exactly where it is. Does that make sense? Cool. If more than one term had a negative exponent, you would move more than one thing. In this problem, only x had the negative exponent. The negative in front of the 7 is not an exponent, so it stays. Our last problem can really be done in multiple orders. I'm going to just pick one and go with it. I can't simplify anything inside the parentheses, so I'm going to go ahead and distribute the -3 to all of the terms. This is going to become 4 to the -3 power, x to the 2 times -3 power over y to the -3 power. So the exponent goes to each term, whether it's in the top or the bottom of the fraction. To save space, I'm just going to erase the 2 times -3. What is 2 times -3? -6. Okay, cool. I got a lot going on here. Let's take care of the negatives, shall we? What was the rule with negatives? We got to clean it up. So the 4 to the -3, what should happen? And then put it where? In the bottom. So this is going to be 4 to the 3rd power down here. What about the x? Also put it to the bottom because it was negative. What about the y? Put it to the top because it has to switch sides as well. Now, technically, you're not done with this problem. There's no more exponent rules to do. But do you notice that you have a regular number raised to a power? I need that multiplied out. 64. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. So the answer I would like for you to end at is y cubed over 64x to the 6th power. We're going to review now probably something, again, you know, but it's been a minute since you maybe thought about, and that's scientific notation and rounding. When we're talking about scientific notation, that's when you're just kind of shorthand a number. So like if I wanted to write the number 500, I could write it as 5 times 10 to the 2nd power. Because that means take the 5 with a decimal afterwards and move that decimal 2 spots to make 500. Does that sound familiar to us? Yes. Great. The calculator that we use in this class doesn't use the times 10 to the n notation. It uses an e. So the number 500 in our calculator in scientific notation would be 5e2. So that's 5 with an error of 2, so you move the decimal 2 points. Does that make sense? In scientific notation, if the number that is the exponent is a positive number, bigger than 0 numbers are positive numbers, it's going to move to the right and make the number bigger. If the number that is the exponent is less than 0, so it is a negative number, you're going to move the decimal to the left. So we can create small numbers or large numbers with scientific notation. Now, the reason that we're making such a big deal about rounding and scientific notation is that when we move from on-paper homework to online homework in 2 weeks when Dallas College semester begins, your homework is going to be very picky about rounding because you should be able to communicate mathematically to me accurately. And it will ask you to round in different ways. So we need to remember the different place values that it might ask you to round to. So if we just write down this like fake number right here, 123.4567889, let's go over the place values for each of these things. First things first, what is this place value? The ones would be here. What is that one? The hundreds. Hundreds. What's this one right here? Tens. Just the tens. And then this one is called the ones. Or more likely what you're going to hear them called is the integer. We learned last time when we talked about real numbers that integers are the counting numbers 0 and their negatives. So when we're talking about integer, probably you would have called that a whole number before today, even though you now know that's not a whole number. Whole numbers don't include the negatives, but we can include them in integers. Now here's where it gets spicy. What is this one called? Ooh, now I heard a lot of different things. It's the tenths with the THS at the end. Tenths. Uh-huh. What's this one called? Hundredths, yes. With a THS at the end. Which means what is this one? Thousandths. Technically, what is this one called? If it was tenths, hundredths, thousandths, that would be... You skipped one. 10 thousandths. But I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty sure your textbook at this point doesn't say 10 thousandths. Otherwise, if that's what it is, it will say 4 decimal points. It does have a name. It is the 10 thousandths. So technically, what is this one called? 100 thousandths. But we're just going to call it 5 decimals. And then this one would be called the what?
10 decimals.
It would be called the 1,000 thousandths. But like, gross. We're just going to call that 6 decimals. I'm pretty sure your textbook after the thousandths just tells you the number of decimals to keep. If not, that is the 10 thousandths, 100 thousandths, 1,000 thousandths, which is a gross title, LOL. So what's that phrase that you guys had in elementary school for rounding? It's like 5 or more, 4 or less. Great, that still applies. That is the rounding rules for forever. So if I had asked you to take this number and round it to the nearest tenths, would you raise this 4 to a 5 or keep it as a 4?
Keep it as a 4.
See, this is why we're going over rounding. When you're rounding, if I want you to round to the nearest tenths, you look behind it. So looking behind it, does this number tell me to raise the score or let it rest?
Yes.
We're going to raise the score, so it'd be 123.5. So rounding, you'd look at the decimal I want, look behind it 1. That's the number that tells you to raise it up or let it rest. Yes? The rounding mechanism that you might be the least familiar with is called significant figures. Has anybody been in a science class that has used significant figures? Great. It's a little bit more difficult of rounding because it changes based on the numbers you're provided. So you can't just say I'm going to round to the nearest tenths always when it comes to significant figures. There are times in this class, especially in the spring when this class becomes trigonometry, that I'm going to ask you to round to sig figs because we're using applied physics problems. So I need us to understand sig figs. If you don't know what these words mean, I recommend writing this entire table down. It's super helpful. The rules for counting sig figs. Non-zero digits are always significant. So in the number 45.6, it has 3 sig figs because 4, 5, and 6 are non-zero digits. Zeros between non-zero digits are always significant. So the number 4005 has 4 sig figs because you count the zeros in between non-zero digits. Leading zeros are never, bless you, leading zeros are never significant. They're just placeholders. So 0.0032 has only 2 sig figs. You don't count the leading ones. Trailing zeros are only significant if there is a decimal point. So for example, 4500 has 2 sig figs, but 4500 with a period behind it has 4 sig figs. So 2 sig figs, 4. Exact numbers like counted items or defined constants have an infinite number of sig figs. So 45.00 has 4 sig figs because we're making a point to write the zeros after the period. They are significant. So one of the things to think about, especially when our homework gets online, is that if you're confident in your answer, but it's telling you you're wrong, first of all, the little pop-up screen probably will tell you like, hey, that's really close, but you're probably rounding incorrectly. Look again at rounding because I want you to have mathematical precision in this class, which means it will not accept a poorly rounded answer. You must answer with the correct rounding.